quest continues for a definitive solution to the protracted Anglophone crisis. A handful of obviously audacious individuals muster the guts to parade the streets of Bamenda with anti-ghost town placards. Meantime, acrimony continues digging deep inroads within the Cameroon Bar as lawyers defending activists arrested and incarcerated in connection with the crisis reiterate their rubbishing of the Bar Council President's announcement heralding a May 2 work resumption for common law lawyers in the English-speaking Northwest and Southwest regions. This is Toughtalk, and we'll begin the deliberations in a moment. And so, as usual, I'm flanked for discussions by two tough talkers. Of course, they all come from within the house. Kejang Henry Atembeh, welcome.
Thanks very much, Taroki Divine, Ramsey Junior Fonui, for inviting
I'm not sure where you get all the names from. Some don't belong to me, and I don't want to become the new Colonel Tamambang, but one of those names is not really mine. Is it fair to reiterate or to emphasize the fact that you are a seasoned journalist?
Well, I don't know what that means. Veteran. I don't know from which age they start grading people veteran.
Anyway, welcome.
Thanks very much.
And so he's a global issues analyst. Elie Smith, as usual, is here with us. Elie?
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
I was going through your YouTube channel, and there are tons and loads of admirers who enjoy what you do every now and then.
Oh yeah, well, it's what I like doing best. So I like to speak my mind, and I think that's what some people like.
So let's just bounce off with our first icebreaker, and I'll stay on with you, Elie Smith. After several months of waiting and speculating, the first round of the French presidential poll has delivered a verdict. Emmanuel Macron versus Marine Le Pen. That's the fixture for the second round of the election. Does that surprise you?
No, the reverse would have. I'm not really surprised because
the traditional socialists and the Republicans are easily ejected from the first round.
Exactly. I'm not very surprised, and I thought it was going to happen that way because it is really a global trend. People are tired of professional politicians and professional or well-known political formations who have not been able to deliver anything, and in particular in France. So if you see a young man like Macron, who is just 39 years old, yes. Well, I think he tries to equilibrate or to balance it with getting married to a woman who is about 68 years, right? 65. Okay, anyway, whatever the case, but I can imagine a man of 39 with a 62 or 65 years old.
Maybe that's why his political maturity comes
I think so, because his presence reassures two generations, the older generation and the younger generation. And then he comes out of the blue. That's what we can say officially, but he was a former French finance minister. But the thing is that the things he speaks, I think that most French people want to hear. For example, when he spoke about he compared colonialism to crime against humanity, the established politicians were not happy, but most young, what they call millennials, were happy about it. I think those type of words that he used really propelled him to the upfront.
But doesn't it worry you a bit that he is excessively pro-Euro, in sharp contrast to Le Pen, who is very nationalist and fervently so?
Good. Personally, I have never been in favor of the Euro nor of the European Union, because I compare the European Union to be a kind of hideout for dictatorship, because sometimes you have these Eurocrats who wants to dictate their whims and caprices on ordinary Europeans. Mm-hmm. Now, being a pro-Euro or a pan-European tends to favor people who are for globalization. Okay. By contrast, were it not for the basic or the underlying ideological pool of Marine Le Pen, I would have rooted for her. But I can't root for somebody who is supporting discrimination, whose political party is an assertive promoter of discrimination, who doesn't support or who tends to underestimate what happened to the Jews. The thing is now, the Marine Le Pen's movement is something that is nationalistic, that if most people in France and around the world want to take back their country. And in France, like in most Western European countries, that people think that globalization or transnational or supranational movements or organizations such as the European Union have denied them of the necessary security that they would have wanted, and has promoted multiculturalism at the detriment of nationalism.
Of course, you said it, Elie Smith. You actually said what I was having in mind, that a new page has been turned in France's political history, and also that it confirms the trend of a fresh rise in the populist leaders across the world. But basically, what lies in the French elections for Cameroon and Cameroonians?
What lies in the French elections for Cameroon and Cameroonians is that Cameroon and most French-speaking African countries south of the Sahara, well, though we are not entirely French-speaking, but we know the majority are French-speaking, is that the new president of France will determine in future how our rapport will be managed. If you listen to what Marine Le Pen said,
yes.
Marine Le Pen said something that if she wins, she's going to come out of the euro, the common European currency, which means that if she comes out from it, and I think she also said Africans should be independent, which means that the pegging of our common currency, the
CFA franc to the French franc, which
yes,
is actually inexistent.
Which is inexistent. So I think
will be reversed.
And I know it is not popular. Most people in Cameroon and most French-speaking African countries think that the fact that our currency is pegged to the euro or the French franc is one of the reasons why we are suffering. But I think no, there is an advantage and a disadvantage in pegging our currency to the euro or the French franc.
In other words,
eventually.
Are you suggesting that we cannot manage the CFA franc even if we got independence over it from France?
To be sincere, we cannot manage it because look at Cameroon, for example. We are unable to run our national airline. We are unable to respect our constitution. We are unable to do basic elementary management. How will we be able to administer or manage intricate things like currency management, which is something you don't have to tinker with it as we are tinkering currently with everything we have?
I must take you to task, and let's keep this brief, Elie Smith. Who do you prefer, Macron or Le Pen?
I prefer Macron.
And now, no matter the outcome of the second round of the elections, Francophone African leaders are expected to be trooping to France sometime before the end of the first half of this year for the inauguration of, well, whoever emerges as the new French president. You see Paul Biya going there to bear witness to the inauguration of someone who's probably younger, far younger than him. Remember when he took over office in 1982, he was 49.
Exactly. He has no option.
That's Macron's age.
Exactly. He has no option because Paul Biya is a stooge. He's a puppet. He became what he is today because of France. So he has to, because failing to go there will be considered or regarded as a kind of irreverential way of doing things, and he risks being punished. So he will go there come what may, because the generation is going, a new crop of leaders are emerging in Paris, and this new crop of leaders are most often influenced or are millennial or post-millennial people who have different views of the Franco-African relationship.
Okay, Elie, thanks once again for coming. Now let's turn over to Kejang Henry with the second icebreaker. Remember, these are not our major talking points for this edition of Tough Talk. We're just taking on the hot issues in the news and briefly analyzing them. And as we speak, Ahmed Abba, I'm sorry for kind of massacring his name. A Radio France International Cameroon Hausa correspondent has been sentenced to 10 years imprisonment and fined about 54 point something million CFA francs. It all happened yesterday at the military tribunal in Yaoundé. Did you see this coming?
Yes, we saw it coming. Just to tell us that the 2015 terrorism law,
2014, December 23.
Yes, 14 terrorism law is taking its hold, and one of the first victims is certainly Abba of the press. Well, amongst maybe a dozen others who are napping in the interim for the same charges, instigating violence, well, all under the canopy of terrorism. Well, we saw it coming. Well, it's rather an unfortunate situation that the sentencing of Abba should take such a proportion. People could even liken the sentencing of Abba because now the government, remember some time ago, the Minister of Communication, Issa Chumba Bakari, said that there are no journalists, or there is just no journalists in prison. But today we find journalists in prison, majority of them.
There should be about 8 of them.
There should be about
especially
8.
in the week of the Anglophone crisis,
Good.
even
And
though Abba is not connected,
to that. But everything being equal, the journalists who are in prison are connected, supposedly connected to terrorism act.
Okay.
So almost a dozen of them coming from the English-speaking part of the country is telling that, well, they could not kill them. Since they could not kill them, like Bamenda killed Delegiwa, so what they could do is to put them in prison, tag them as terrorists or fundamentalists or extremists, so that they could pay a price.
Some observers have been quick to remark that, well, the punishment on Abba Ahmed is way too heavy. Is it?
Well, if you
In
are
your
tagged under the
judgment?
terrorism law and if he's found guilty of terrorism act, well, even if that sentenced him to imprisonment, probably we were expecting rather that
It should be a live imprisonment
Abba
or
should have a live imprisonment or death
capital
sentence or
punishment.
capital punishment. If they are giving him 10 years,
It's lenient.
It's lenient, yes. It is said to be lenient, but then the court knows what it has done. Sometimes you say you don't quarrel with the judgment. You can only appeal the judgment through your counsels.
How do you appreciate the fact that the judgment still came through despite the avalanche of pressure from the international community? Did you see the same kind of pressure from the local? You are a member of the Cameroon Anglophone Journalists Speaking Association, Cameroon-France. We didn't see the same kind of pressure coming from local journalist trade unions and associations, for example.
Local journalist trade unions have their spokesperson. You know, generally they have to make statements based on certain facts that they have gathered. But then the pressure is equally coming from the International Committee for the Protection of Journalists.
The CPJ.
The CPJ, which all of us belong to. So if the CPJ speaks on behalf of the journalists, then it's not a bad thing to say that, well, the local media should equally speak again on that.
And talking about the CPJ, it actually remarks that Ahmed Abba spent exactly 635 days in pretrial detention before the sentencing, of course. It also remarks that the sentence signals the length to which the Cameroon government and the Cameroonian authorities are prepared to go to sanction people found guilty of condoning terrorism.
Well, not probably sanctioning people, but
are you scared as a journalist? Yes.
I am not scared if the government, remember that I think Baba Wame and Roderick Tonge were called up and they were quizzed by the military tribunal. Some others have been quizzed by the military tribunal. The problem is not being afraid. The problem is having your facts or knowing what you are saying. Because when we say we are afraid, it means we are even going back to when it was a difficult moment to practice.
Okay. Thanks once again, Kejang. I'll just let you go with the announcement that the lawyer for Ahmed Abba, he's called Clement Nakon, has promised that he's going to file an appeal within the 10-day time limit set by the court. That's probably a doomed endeavor?
It shouldn't be a doomed endeavor. In fact, everything is appeal. You appeal and move right up to the Supreme Court. Don't forget that many of those who were held because of who held in Guantanamo, many of them have been released because some were finally found guilty. I'm sorry, they were discharged and acquitted because at the end of the day they discovered that they did not have or had any link to do with purported terrorists. So it can be possible for his sentence to be reduced at the level of the appeal court. Mm-hmm. If he's not satisfied, he will move to the Supreme Court, etc., etc.
Okay, now let's take a breather, and when we come back, we'll delve straight into our first major talking point for this other edition of Tough Talk. Here's a brief transition. So, Elie Smith, welcome once again. The ghost town in Bamenda on Monday was welcomed by anti-ghost town demonstrations. In fact, reports from the Northwest Regional Capital, Bamenda, actually indicate that a face-off or skirmish was only narrowly avoided after placard-wielding demonstrators marching against the ongoing ghost town operations paraded the streets of the town, calling on people to say no, but curiously, the streets were empty.
Yes.
Paradoxical.
It's paradoxical because we knew that immediately the internet will be reinstated. There will be a group of people who will come out from the blue and perhaps
address motions
of support to the head of state or do what they have just done. The thing is, I understand that those people who march in Bamenda were each given the sum of 10,000 CFA francs to march, which means that it was not a kind of internal movement, but it was commandeered in an exogenous manner.
Financially motivated. I'm not going to ask you to let out the identity of your sources out there when you quote 10,000 CFA francs.
Exactly, I will not normally because our profession doesn't require us to give anything. That's the reason why they did what they did, but it did not change anything because what is going on in northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon or West Cameroon in general is a kind of national nativist movement because people are tired of 56 years of injustices. What the government has to do, instead of trying to maneuver its ways through subtle methods that they are doing, like what they are doing when they have their leader called Chedaka Nicholas, trying to push people, but you saw that.
That's the coordinator of the demonstrations in Bamenda yesterday. We're going to listen to him in the next couple of moments.
The thing is, if it was something which was a kind of natural movement, there was no need for military men to guard them. The simple fact that you see people, demonstrators, escorted by the military shows that it was something illegitimate and that is not going to change the trend in that region. What I thought or I think the government has to do, which I think they are incompetent in managing this crisis, was simply to solve the causes or try to solve the causes of what made the West Cameroon to be what she is today.
Thanks very much. Henry Kejang, well, some have considered the movement yesterday in Bamenda as highly provocative.
Highly provocative.
In fact, face-offs were only narrowly avoided.
Thank God the march was not organized by Atanga Ponji. That would have been another twist of it all.
Why?
Well, you know, because marches these days without necessarily solving the problem would probably spark or throw more petrol into on the fire. Well, if the provocative march, we could do a head count of the number of people because the video footages that we had could not fool anybody. We could do a head count, and those we saw amongst the demonstrators, you found some children of about 12 years. I don't know for what reason. You include children in the march. You found some teens of 14. You see, then the real business people that you know, because I know Bamenda very well, just like you know, that if there were to be a march, the people we expect to find on the streets were supposed to be there. The big business concerns, even the big traders or the big buy and sellers in the Bamenda town, all those women would have been out in the Bamenda market. But then we learned, and of course the pictures are there, the cluster of people who marched across the street. Finally, they were watched, from a very prudent distance by those people wondering, but what is happening here? So it would, like say, it's provocation. And at the end of the day, you remember when they marched through, some people voluntarily, in fact, not if it was something that was spontaneous, removed that same T-shirt because they were marching with their bags. They have their normal plain clothes inside. So at the end of the march, they had to remove the T-shirt because they were afraid of something. Since you said since you said it was provocative, that was even more provocation.
Some have called the anti-ghost town demonstrators ghosts themselves. Some have said there were policemen who were hired to stage the protests against the anti-ghost towns in that part of the country. But going by logical reasoning, Elie Smith, you must agree that the ghost town operations have had backfiring effects on traders and their businesses across English-speaking Cameroon.
It is true.
For too long.
No, it is true. It is really true that when there are such operation, it affects the economy of the country or of the region, right?
So it's time to put an end to it.
But the other question is, I'm not refuting yet. It is time to put an end to the ghost town operation on condition that the reasons that caused the ghost town to begin first are solved.
Okay.
If they are not solved, there's no reason, there's no justification to end such a movement. But you said it appears that 5 months or 6 months of ghost town operation has contributed in rattling the economy of that country. But what you perhaps omitted is to say that 3 months of internet interruption has crippled the economy of that part of the world, of Cameroon. And remember, there is something that people don't want to say, is that the unification of this country, the losers have been Anglophones. The economy of that part of the country has been ruined, destroyed. Now, when it started emerging through new technology,
Silicon Mountain,
in Boya,
for example,
in Boya, and people who are struggling in the north of the West Cameroon, they decided one morning to destroy it, to cripple it, and they just wanted to do what they did in 1960 or 1961, to transfer everything from Boya and Bamenda back to East Cameroon. So I think that this thing is not going to stop if the problem is not solved. And Anglophones have been the losers. We have lost everything. But there are two things that English-speaking Cameroon will not trade: the judicial system and the educational system.
Inherited from British colonial rule, of course, which ended in 1961. Kejang Henry Patrick Ekema Esunge is the mayor of the Boya municipality in the southwest region. He has described the traders who decide to lock up their shops on ghost town operation days as secessionists.
Yes.
Is it controversial that he comes out?
Well, that is ignorance. That is ignorance.
The mayor is ignorant?
The mayor is, yes, is ignorant. You cannot, first of all, the mayor, remember that he had battled out with the governor of the southwest region, to win the eyes of Mr. Paul Biya, because most of them, like we learned, are going in for appointments, so that whoever is the first to abate the crisis will probably win it all at the end of the day. So Mr. Ekema, when broken people's shop, in fact, it was arrogantly destroying shops, forcing them to open, and people had to lose a lot of money because their shops were broken open, and some people went and pilfered their goods. Well, that was not a good move, because you cannot be a man of the people, because the mayors are the men of the people, because they brought you to that seat, and at the end of the day, you turn your back against those people. They should not forget that, well, the electoral stakes are higher, especially in the southwest and northwest regions of the country. So whoever has probably stepped extra mile should be able to count his flaws or be licking his wounds at the end of the day when 2018 will come up.
Just to add that similar matches against the ghost town operations have been staged in Kumba, in Limbe, and more recently in Boya, before being relocated or transported to Bamenda in the northwest region. Now, our Bamenda Bureau Chief, Ngnie Collins, actually caught up with the coordinator of the anti-ghost town demonstrations in Bamenda Monday. He is called Chair Ndaka Nicholas. We will be hearing from him in the following excerpts, and right after him, we will hear from a couple of others who joined him in the demonstrations in Bamenda Monday.
For the population, people go there for upside country where they work fine, they put the go school, they we run and say maybe put no go school, maybe go stand. That I see I'm saying a big failure for we, not before them. He's telling me for many ways. My kid not go to school. And not in this. And then after that, business not the worker. For cow, you know the worker. For farm, you know the worker. For store, you know the worker. So we see I'm saying you don't take the content for back to the empty.
So it's enough reason So if we keep adding injuries to wounds, it's going to take us nowhere. So we are putting an end to this ghost town and tell Bamenda people to go about their daily activities while the head of state and the government sees into the solution of all the problems. Protest organized by youths and fellow people of Bamenda to protest against the so-called ghost town, which has rendered many businesses, activities to a slowdown for a long time now. So we want an end to it, and then the state too has decided to see into all the problems. So I don't think ghost town is a solution.
We have a right to our opinion, and our humble opinion is that we should build this nation. We are nation builders, and when we build the nation, we all enjoy it. The ghost town that has been prevailing in Bamenda for a long time now has actually destroyed the town in terms of the economic potential we had. And people incurred money from Jange groups that have been unable to pay, and this has rendered their families in a very miserable situation. So we are appealing on all Bamenda citizens to think twice on the issue of the ghost town and see how they can stand as one man and clear it off. And
just to indicate to you all, and this is for clarification purposes, the guy in the white face cap is actually called Che Ndaka Nicholas. That's the coordinator of the demonstrations in Bamenda Monday, while the others are those who came out in support of the movement. I'll throw this question to both of us before we rush out to Bamenda to speak to our Bureau Chief Ngnie Collins. Elie Smith?
Yes, sir.
Could such demonstration signal the beginning of the end of the Anglophone crisis?
No, on the contrary, it is going to act like fuel into the movement of, how can I say, the political movement against the government, because it's synonymous to what Atanga Ngnie did. You know, Atanga Ngnie was like manna from heaven into the whole movement and the whole thing. I don't think so. To end this thing, you don't need a magic wand. I have said it and I'm saying it again. The problems that caused it are still there. They have not been solved. If they are solved, the ghost town is going to end. But on the contrary, the government has shown that they are incompetent in management. They are primitive in the way they are reacting, because beside this, I think a day or a week before, it was a so-called consortium that rose up.
A two-parent consortium.
Two-parent consortium.
One of the parents is backing out, and which means it's a one-parent consortium.
It's a one-parent consortium which wants to stop the whole thing. No, it's not going to stop. On the contrary, I think it's trying to, as Ronald Reagan said in 1984, putting fuel in the tank of the enemies in code.
Kejang Henry, we're going to get your view on this right after we get in touch with Ngnie Collins. Ngnie, you're on standby in Bamenda. How is your town waking up this morning?
Good morning, Divine. The town is booming this morning after the absence of business yesterday. Yes. The ghost town, of course, it was Monday, and a heavy downpour last night got the town wet this morning.
So I'm actually hearing a couple of reactions. People are referring to those who were wielding placards yesterday in denunciation of the ghost town operations as ghosts themselves. Is that what people are saying?
Yeah. Ghosts themselves, some people say they are. And, well, we just discovered them along some streets in Bamenda. And let me come back to my figures I estimated them to be yesterday.
Yes.
I talked of about 100. It was far less than that.
Okay.
Those with whom we happened to have shared the pictures that we took, I mean, other colleagues and other persons who saw the pictures, they estimated to be at most 50. So I globally said something like 100. Well, probably 50 will go for the number of those who took part in the demonstrations yesterday in Bamenda. Of course, they were welcomed by the ghosts, as you must have seen in the pictures. The streets were dry, completely dry, and many people were wondering how it took another twist yesterday, because it was really great yesterday.
Okay.
So people thought that maybe government would think that with the return of the internet last week, so at the close of last week, that things were going to come back to normal by this Monday, a day ago now. It wasn't yesterday. So it is an indication that the government should probably answer to all the demands of the Anglophone community for things to come back to normal exactly as they used to be before the goes down.
Okay, Collins, let's leave that there and let me take you over to the campus of the youngest university in Cameroon. Of course, the youngest state-run university is called the University of Bamenda, but it's actually based in Bambili, and that's where the 20th edition of the University Games are unfolding since the weekend. What's the situation out there? Are the crowds turning out?
Yes, the crowds are turning out, especially on the opening ceremony, the day of the opening of the games.
All right.
We know we had a battery of 4 ministers, Jack Ndongo of higher education, Biduk Bat of sports and physical education, Mba Rose of Supreme State Audit, and Tanglan Paul of special duties and presidency. So they themselves came with, of course, if the 4 ministers are coming somewhere, you can imagine the fleet of cars that they're going to come with. And that already is the crowd, and then the universities that have come to universities and higher institutions of learning that came for the games, and then the local population that also came out. And yes, the complex or the Olympic stadium of the University of Bamenda, it was to that the heavy downpour came at the close of it all.
That should be an additional problem, Annie Collins, because some of the playgrounds have not been completed, and now it rains on them.
Yes, it is really muddy on the campus, and muddy and slippery. You know, like somebody told me that you will never have a 100% realization of projects for the games would begin. So it has to go like that, especially with the university that is a young one and still crippling with the situation of buildings for itself, let alone for the game. So it was it's normal that we get a situation like that, mud and the slippery nature coupled with the rain. And some persons were even suggesting that if the authorities of the Ministry of Higher Education could revise the period for the games, that would be good, because the rains always come in. If we could go back to something like February or March, so that the rains spare the advent from the finicky nature of places, especially when we come to new campuses like that of the University of Bamenda.
Okay, Collins. Now you're talking about readjusting the date for the games, especially when it is staged in parts of the country like Cameroon during the rainy season. But I've heard a lot of opinion, going in the line of why not relocate the games altogether, considering the socio-political climate in Bamenda and, English-speaking Cameroon. Some say the government's emphasis on having the game staged in Bamenda or in Bambili, is to show the world that all is well in that part of the country. Now the question is, the theme for the games is peace, unity, and tolerance. Is it contributing in chilling anti-government sentiment in your part of the country, Collins?
Unity and tolerance. Comment on that thing. No, this unity issue in Cameroon, it's often said that Cameroon is united in its diversity.
Okay.
That has always been government talk. And the ones, of course, face the games come what may, so that, of course, it shows the world that everything is fine, and also not to back down on anti-government demands or threats. And it's a way of saying that government is after everything, calling the shots.
Okay.
You also remember that not only the university games, other ceremonies, other public ceremonies have come and have been staged under easy military security, and that is to tell you that they want to do it at all costs. You have the Fedasco B games that ended a few weeks back, You have the Women's Day, 11th of February, and so on. So those national days and public ceremonies have come, and government has put place the security at every corner of the town so that anti of those public ceremonies do not come up to dampen the show, or so that December 8th should not be repeated. Let's talk of December 8th, of course, you know what Bamenda was on that day.
Thanks
So
very
it
much,
was,
Ali.
like a study like that on that December 8th.
So Professor Teresa Akenji should be heaving huge sighs of relief, but then it's the absence, and briefly Collins rather, is the absence of the Catholic University Institute of Boya a major cause for concern?
Yes, since the back out of the games, probably something like on the eve of the game. So it's making some noise here. Many people thought that it was the Roman Catholic mission that has withdrawn that institution, but it was said that they had some problems with their players. Some of them have been tested, and there are some other internal issues, so they could not make it to the game. I'm talking about Professor Teresa Akenji, who is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Bamenda. Yeah. I read much fatigue on her face on that day, that she stood her ground. She stood her ground and went through her speech. Of course, even one of the boys holding an umbrella shade her. One of the boys succumbed, descended, collapsed on the spot. That the professor, Vice Chancellor, went on with her speech as if nothing had happened near her. So next to her, so one of the boys holding the umbrella shade her so that she could read the speech through. Okay. The boy came down and collapsed and was rushed to hospital. Just to say that it was something like fatigue. You know, with these young ones, they had to be, of course, it's a proposal, probably they had to be substituted after about 30 minutes or 1 hour, another person comes and takes over. Yeah, sure. It will seem that that boy or those boys who were holding those umbrellas had been standing there for several hours. Okay. And so that one no longer there, it could no longer there, and he collapsed on the spot and was rushed to hospital.
Thanks very much. Ngnie Collins, thanks so much for all of your contributions. Of course, plus the image reports that we've been using on this edition of Tough Talk. Thanks once again.
Thank you, Ivan. Over to you.
Stay safe and see you Thursday, most probably. Kejang Henry, before we went out to Bamenda, there was this question. And let's come back to the anti-ghost town demonstrations. Do you consider them a signal as if the crisis may well be driving to an end?
If we had seen a very strong mobilization from across those cities where people bashed, we saw what happened in Kumba, we saw that, just a handful, even in Boya, every sector should come out if they want the ghost town to stop. But then they know what the problem is, and unless they have to address the problems, I think the ghost town, it is a tradition, and you know that the people actually prepared for. They are very much used to. This is the longest ghost town we've noticed in this country. The 90s we
in Africa, really,
and even in Africa.
Oh, so, no, I was talking about the internet cutoff.
Well, no, ghost town, yeah, of course, but why not ghost town? The people naturally, they have their normal Mondays, and by the end of the week, they buy their food, they do their normal activities. They just say on Monday we will not work. They just add an extra day. But on Sunday, the markets are open, they buy their food, and then on Monday they sit at home.
But the ghost towns, I mean, the days when they are organized, are tactfully arranged, Elie Smith, to coincide with a couple of major events.
Yes, because
they want to use the major events.
Because the thing is that those who are pulling the strings from behind are strategists. And because this is a war, perhaps not fought with weapons, but a communication war whereby the government has lost through and through, because they are not young people. When you have people who are 90, 100 years governing the country, so you can imagine that there are people living in the 20th century or 17, while the people who are pulling the strings of the movement in West Cameroon are living in the 21st century. That's the reason why they have to make it to coincide with major events in order for the effect to be well felt by the government, because what the government is also doing is also manipulation. I think Colin said somewhere, maybe he didn't say as I'm saying, when they are trying to organize the university games in a region that is openly against the central government, is a signal that they want to show to the world, all right, everything is well, whereas the reality is that it is not. And I would like to see, an organization or an event like the one which is currently going on in Bamenda. The success is measured on the number of participants.
Attendees.
If we have a good turnout, then it's successful. If you have what happened at FENASCO B game, then it is a resounding failure unless they are going to burst people from Francophone Cameroon to Anglophone Cameroon to give an illusion that everything is working. But it's not going to be surprising. In every dictatorial regimes, such manipulations are put in place.
Just to remind our viewers that, Bambili has been expecting between 3,300 and something to about 5,000 attendees at the 20th edition of the University Games. Now, remember, this is Tough Talk, and if you cannot follow us live, then you can always tune in to Elie Smith's YouTube page. Just go to YouTube and type Elie Smith, followed by Tough Talk, and you can be able to watch rebroadcasts or podcasts of the same show. You can also link up with us on Facebook, Canal 2 English, Canal 2 English on Facebook. Otherwise, simply reach out to one of our contacts and we can get back to you, of course, with responses to your suggestions. Now we'll be coming to settle on our second major talking point for the day. But first of all, let's have a breather. So the trial of lead activists and other persons arrested in connection to the protracting Anglophone crisis resumes this April 27th at the military tribunal in Yaoundé. In the meantime, a rift between the Cameroon Bar council president and the legal counsel for the accused persons appears to be widening. I'll start with you, Kejang. Shall begin with Elie Smith. The counsel for defense, including the likes of Barrister Ben Acho Muna, has been rubbishing the April 9 declaration by Batonier Ngnie Kamga, indicating that common law lawyers are due work resumption on May the 2nd. Remember, they've been boycotting the courts in the English-speaking northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon since October.
Yes, the thing is, I know from the onset, Ngnie Kamga, the president or the chair of the Cameroon Bar Council, has not been sincere in what is going on. I want to believe it's simply because he doesn't live in West Cameroon. He doesn't have a chamber there, so he doesn't know what is going on. He's alien to the sufferings of those people. That's the reason why I think the first person who began the onslaught on him was Bobga Harmony. The simple thing is, I'm going to say the truth, the thing is that if Ngnie Kamga were somebody like Chungang, it would not have happened. The former Batonier. It would not have happened that way or this way. The simple thing is that Ngnie Kamga is a corrupt man who is unable to challenge the Minister of Justice. And if you look at the way the Minister of Justice speaks to him, he doesn't give him an ounce of respect. And now, Muna is right. This is a man who did not start anything, who has not been able to support the Anglophone lawyers who voted for him massively. I think Henry knows the whole story. It seemed as if the lawyers who voted, the caucus that voted for him massively, came from the southwest region of Cameroon, right, who are, of course, Anglophones. But when his friends were in jail or were arrested, this man took, I think, 1 month before he could react, because he reacted simply because under pressure. So it's normal for Muna to act the way he has acted. I think what Ngnie Kamga wants to do is that he wants to do his own political ambitions on the back of the Anglophones, because what is going on now is that if he succeeds in breaking that movement, then he will be rewarded. I think this man is a disgrace to the Bar Council of Cameroon, and he deserves what he's having. I think kudos to Mr. Muna for trying to rubbish all the ambitions of Ngnie Kamga.
Well, Ben Muna has not actually made that declaration that he is out to stall any political ambitions by Batonier Ngnie Kamga. But at a news conference in Yaoundé on April the 19th, Barrister Ben Muna and co. emphasized that any genuine start to the crisis resolution would only begin with a meeting between the Batonier Ngnie Kamga and either them or the clients, including Felix Agbobala and Walter Sabadem, who are held alongside 72 others in detention in Yaoundé. Kejang?
Yes, it is all part of the process. Batonier Ngnie Kamga is, I'm surprised because initially when this crisis started, when Barrister Abeng Roland started this whole movement,
with the request
with
for the
a request
to be
for the Ohada laws to be translated into English, Ngnie Kamga wrote a letter to the Minister of Justice. I have a copy of the letter. And there was another letter that was written to the Secretary General in that same ministry, Justice Gwanmisia George, asking for the translation of this document. But I'm surprised at the twist that Ngnie Kamga is taking now. Don't forget that like Elie said, Ngnie Kamga, majority of his votes came from the Southwest region. I remember the mobilization that came from Barrister Yambe, who is the president of the Meme Lawyers Association. I remember the how Barrister Agbobala, who was the president of the FACLA, actually mobilized for him. Well, if there should be any discussions, it must be one with the Balas. He can meet them and talk in prison. I want to believe that he meets them. It should be with the lawyers caucus, that is to say the Anglophones. I understand 20 of them left the Southwest region and met 20 others, you know, senior advocates and the likes of Barrister Kemende, without naming all of them, Senze, etc. They wanted to broker a truce, but it could not work.
They met under the canopy of an organization called the Conclave.
The Conclave. The Conclave. Another name that is certainly not welcome in the ranks of the government, because that might even fetch them more problems. You know, they might tell me another terrorist organization that is in the making. Well, I think Barrister Ngnie Kamga's move, it was a unanimous move without consultation with the lawyers.
Okay.
And so calling the lawyers to go back to the courts on the 2nd of May, well, that is his own cup of tea. This morning, as we speak, the papers are already saying that people will be leaving the private sector to move into the government because there are juicy positions that they are probably promising them. They will leave the private sector. And so whoever, I repeat, whoever should be proclaimed as the person who has salvaged the situation will probably be rewarded.
Okay.
Barrister Ntufo Nikwale is already a member of the National Bilingualism and Multiculturalism Commission.
So he has been rewarded for being
I want to think that is
unsafe, unjust to the Anglophones, right?
Well, I'm not rather saying that it's unjust, at least for making his own point. So probably tomorrow it might be me to harvest some gains. It might be you, Elie.
Okay.
In passing, the legal counsel for the accused again reiterated that it was a blunder for Batonier Ngnie Kamga to have publicized the declaration without contacting them and their clients who actually spearheaded the protests in the first place. But in a counter-press statement issued at the weekend by the Bar Council Secretary Philip Memong, he restated that the Batonier, Elie Smith, is by right the lead counsel for defense for the accused, arrested and incarcerated persons. Is this some form of arrogation, belated arrogation?
No, it's not
usurpation or something?
No, there's no usurpation. There's no belated arrogation of any title. Yes, but the only problem that the Secretary General, Mr. Memong Philip, has not indicated is that his chairman has not been honest or neck deep involved in this crisis from the world.
The Bar Council President.
Yes, Mr. Jackson. Okay. He has not. It is not when the heat is on him that he wants today to arrogate the title that he had and behave like the biblical Esau. He has not. I think he has the right, but the thing is that he doesn't live in West Cameroon. How will a lawyer in Kumba, in Bamenda, in Kumbo, or in Victoria go to court while his brothers and sisters are in jail? We know how dubious is this government. Once they start going to court, that will be the end of the story. No, it is what is happening currently is called an esprit de corps. When you have your colleague who is in difficulties, you stand by him or her. But Ngnie Kamga has not manifested an esprit de corps. He has just manifested a lonesome ambition of getting to somewhere, maybe because of promises that he has been made, but he has failed and he will not succeed.
The detained activists Kejang Henry have demanded their release as a first step to the genuine start to the resolution of the phase-off. They are also asking for a stress-free return of their runaway colleagues, including Bobga Harmony, Elie Smith was mentioning a while ago, and guarantees that those who eventually return to the country will not be harassed and that there will be no further arrests, and also that a ban on the movement out of the country on some of these lawyers will be lifted. Is that too much to ask?
It is not too much. It is just the basic things that they're asking. If they should grant clemency, and clemency, like we were saying, should extend to or to spread out to other actors of these movements, like the Buibras, like Bobga Harmony, the Yambes, they are out there. And not only the lawyers, some members of civil society and even students of the University of Buea and Bamenda, some of them who are on the run. So it is not asking too much. It is rather than saying, release our colleague, stretch out the amnesty to the others who are on the run, let them come home, and then promise that you will not arrest them. Because if they are arrested again, then you have not solved the problem. If you bring them, if you grant amnesty, and they come back, after some time they disappear from public sight, it becomes suspicious, then the government will not be doing any good to anybody. Okay.
So I listened to Barrister Ben Muna on STV with your friend DP Tatongo, Elie Smith, and he unleashed blistering castigations and attacks on the government for having chosen the wrong emissaries to send to the northwest and southwest regions at the initial stages of this crisis. He says they lacked mastery of the art of negotiation.
He is absolutely correct. He was correct through and through. I think that was the best show he ever did in honesty. And nobody is surprised to know that most people that were sent there knew nothing.
Including Prime Minister Philemon Yang.
The problem with Prime Minister Philemon Yang is that he has stayed in Canada for too long, and when he came back from Canada, he has decided to stay there in Yaoundé. He is cut off from the reality. True or false, I learned that it has been for 2 years without him going to his own village. I learned something, I don't know if it is true. But someone like the Prime Minister who has no legitimacy, the problem that Muna was saying is this: people who have to negotiate must have some kind of legitimacy and understand what is going on. Most of those who were sent there knew nothing. Some of them were just very arrogant, and they insert pour fuel on fire already.
Kejang Henry, the internet has been restored after a 93-day cutoff. Some say it's in prelude to the release of the detained persons in connection with the crisis. Is that feasibility?
It can be. It can be, because just last week, I think in the middle of the week, last week, there were a series of measures taken by the government to solve the crisis, especially the training of members of the Anglophone Judiciary Corps. And then 2 days after, they lift the ban on internet. So we might see it. Today is the 25th of April. In 2 days, those detainees will be going back to the courts. Yes, the due process will certainly move on. It will certainly move on. But that might be a pointer to the fact that, well, if on the 27th, which is called the historic 27, if the trial comes to an end and they are convicted, clemency might follow suit, probably before children go on holidays. And don't forget, we are at the threshold of another school year
In September.
So the children will be going back in the month of June. In fact, May. May. And so it become catastrophic if the crisis is not solved earlier enough.
Now, Tabby Clarkson is our correspondent in Yaoundé. Hello, Tabby.
Hello, Divine Tarike.
It's nice to have you, and your voice sounds like you're just from having a very hectic breakfast. Am I correct?
Well, Divine Tarike, anyway, I am fine. We thank God for that.
Oh, thanks. So, the people in Yaoundé, and this is where the big event is happening, the showdown between Barrister Bamenda and Batonier Ngnie Kamga. Are people talking about this?
Of course, people are talking about it, Divine Tarike. Believe me, here in the nation's capital, many are those Anglophone who are in support of Barrister Bamenda, because Barrister Bamenda thinks that the Batonier has nothing to do or nothing to say about the Anglophone.
Can you raise your voice? We're almost losing you.
Actually began with the lawyers and the teachers.
Okay.
But according to Barrister Bamenda and many Anglophones here in the nation's capital, it's an Anglophone issue. And nobody can better explain Anglophone issues more than Anglophone themselves. Barrister Kamga is not, the Batonier is not an Anglophone according to Barrister Bamenda, and according to other Anglophones too, they think that Anglophone issues should be tackled by Anglophones themselves, because Anglophones actually are the ones who for years have been victims of the marginalization that they are victims of. They are actually marginalized by Francophones. So many Anglophones say that what is happening between Barrister Bamenda and the Batonier Kamga is very much in favor of, they are supporting Barrister Bamenda.
So, I know you've been talking to a couple of common law lawyers based out there in Yaoundé. Are they telling you that there's a possibility of there are over 800 colleagues based in the English-speaking Northwest and Southwest regions returning to work on May the 2nd?
Well, it's so that some common law lawyers, they want to work, they want to go to work, but they think that this Anglophone issue is an issue that actually concerns Anglophones, and that there is no need for Francophones. It's true that we are in a republic, but there is really no need for Francophones or for the Batonier to ask people to go to work like that. That he does not, or that he actually did not start the strike action. It's true that he actually came in the middle of the protest, but he cannot ask people to stop the strike action like that because he is not an Anglophone. Many do believe that those who are actually in Adekunigi Central Prison should be released first, and we want to believe that some are saying that maybe on the second or on the fourth, some leaders, Felix Kouron and others, certainly they will be released. And if they are released, why not? Maybe the common law lawyers will actually resume work.
And, well, you are very close to the corridors of power. I know where Canal, the international office, is based in Yaoundé. It's a stone throw from A to D. That's where the presidency is. Now, can we suggest that we could see the release of these detainees in the next coming days, following the restoration of the internet in the Northwest and Southwest?
Yes, of course, Divine Tarike is the talk of the day, is the talk of the town. For weeks now, people have been talking about it, and we want to believe that maybe on the second or on the fourth, according to rumors, that Kouron, Felix, and others will actually be released, because if they are released, believe me, peace will return, and what will see it in Bamenda or in Boya. Many do believe that these leaders who were arrested should be released, and if they talk here in Yaoundé, if they talk here, be it at Apetudi, where Canal is equally located, you know, we are not very far from the presidency of the Republic. We want to believe that the news that we are getting here at Etudi is good news, and that, of course, these leaders will be released as soon as possible.
Thanks very much, Tabby Clarkson, and our greetings to our colleagues in Yaoundé.
You are welcome, Divine.
Thanks very much. I think we'll just move out of this and attack, or rather touch on our last major talking point, Elie Smith. Siblings of Ayah Paul Abine, who was arrested, some say kidnapped, on the 21st of January 2017, and whisked off to detention, and then later charged with terrorism acts, say they are increasingly targeted by anonymous death threats and nocturnal intimidations. The latest incident reportedly occurred Friday night when yet to be identified individuals failed in an attempt to force their way into the former CPDM MP's Yaoundé residence. This is disturbing news for Ayah Paul Abine, Elie Smith, and that's how we conclude.
It's disturbing, and it shows that this our government is a very violent government. This man has been kidnapped and thrown into jail. Why intimidate his family?
Kejang Henry, one last reaction. Is there reason to be scared for, not even for Ayah Paul, but now for his wife and his kids?
Yeah, there's every reason to be scared, and that is why the people of Akwaya, who are completely cut off from the rest of Cameroon because they do business with Nigeria. If you want to go to
they actually
Akwaya,
trade in Naira.
They trade in Naira. If you want to go to Akwaya, you pass through Nigeria before coming back to your country. I cannot go to Chad for example, to Kuseri and move to Chad before coming back to Kuseri because there are no roads, and the people are so offended by the fact that Ayah Paul was kidnapped. Now we are hearing stories of his children being threatened by who we don't know. Okay. So it's a very disturbing situation.
We actually have an excerpt from Ayah Paul Abine's son, but we can't play it for lack of time. We'll probably do that on Thursday. Meantime, Emmanuel Bivirica was on the cameras and Gilo Donald was on the dashboard. Up next is, as usual, the papers with Ambo Gladys.